The Talk Station presents Faith Matters, a look at contemporary stories and issues from a faith perspective. While this is a pre-recorded show, we are interested in your ideas, comments, and questions, and we urge you to email them to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life.
And now on the Talk Station, Faith Matters.
And welcome to our program for another week. I'm Ben Ball, pastor of Broad Creek United Methodist Church, along with Reverend Robert Cornegie, associate pastor, Chapel by the Sea in Emerald Isle, and also Pastor Carl Zorowski from St. Peter's United Methodist Church. And good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Ben.
And let's get started with an article that came out about the Church of England. This is from the BBC, and also in an article that's in it's both in front of the BBC. And this is Church of England votes to explore transgender services. Supporters of the services said the church should offer a welcome to people to mark their transition. Others have suggested the services would be counter to parts of the Bible that state that humans are created either male or female. The church's 4-day General Synod meeting in New York started on Friday. The motion recognized the need for transgender people to be welcomed and affirmed in the parish church. So again, Robert, this is talking about a age-old liturgy change, really. I mean, really a very, very different kind of understanding of what it means to welcome people into the church.
Yeah, again, we see who's having more influence. Is the culture influencing the church, or is the church influencing the culture? And I have to say, in this situation, at least with this particular church, the Anglican Church, that it's culture influencing theology, because this is one of the foundation points. This is one of the pillars upon which the entire revelation of God is built. And that's through the family, through men and women coming together, one man, one woman having children, and that becomes the foundation of the culture and the community, the culture, the state. It goes on, and if you take that foundation point away, that there is no difference, and this has been going on for a long time in a lot of different movements, that there is no difference really between men and women. That biologically, of course, we know scientifically that there is. On the chromosomal level, there's a big difference between the two. But on the perceptive level, feeling level, they're claiming that you can switch back and forth between. You can go from male to female to male.
Somewhere in between.
To somewhere in between.
Non-binary.
Non-binary, and that's perfectly legitimate. Well, that's absolutely contrary to church doctrine and dogma. So, yeah, it'll be, we know, we've been down this thing so many times. We know where this leads. Anytime you compromise on the Word of God, there's a consequence. Ideas have consequences. So this is a bad idea with potentially bad consequences.
Now, one of the things that to be considered here is in this other article as well, talks about the Church of England's governing body has voted to look into special services for transgender people. There's a difference in this article. It's talking about welcoming all trans folk. There's a difference between welcoming people and accepting their particular behavior as the norm. Isn't that, Carl? Isn't that a vast difference?
I'd say it is a big difference. One of the articles said that this would not be a second baptism, as the church's teaching is that humans are made in the image of God, transcending gender, and baptism takes place only once. And certainly the scriptures in one of the creation accounts says, that that humankind was created in the image of God, male and female. He created them. So is it that God is is it that God is neither male nor female, or does God have qualities of both? We could get into an argument over that. But the church has got to recognize that anybody, no matter how they identify, is a person of value in God's eyes. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to endorse the actions of that individual, because that's when sin becomes sin is when it becomes an action, when we act on something. If I were an alcoholic, the church should certainly accept me and love me, but when I begin to act on my alcoholism, then the church is there to try to help me say no to that inclination. But it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person because I was an alcoholic.
That's right. And the reason we try to help that person is because we love that person.
That's right. And
it's not because we're rejecting that person or trying to punish that person. It's because we're trying to help them. It's out of love. It's a correction.
But the gulf in the understanding seems that it's is that the desire on the person who feels that they're in this victim class, whatever, to be able to self-actualize that victimization is normalcy. You know, not that the not that the love isn't there. And when we say that we want to be able to accept trans folk and any other folk that walk in the door and love them as children of God, you're precisely right, Carl. I mean, it doesn't mean that we stop ministering to them.
Correct.
Because of how they identify and how they understand their own their self-understanding of right and wrong.
Yeah, that's right. And see, that's the problem we've gotten into with this self-actualization. Mm-hmm. Truth is relative. Mm-hmm. Truth is basically what I think it is. It's what's true for me. It may not be true for you, but it's true for me. And so this is the inevitable consequence of that kind of thinking. I mean, this is where this goes. And so that everyone does, and that Scripture is so perfect for this, does what's right in their own mind. Mm-hmm. You see that? And it's not constrained. Go ahead.
And when did that happen? It was when they did not have a king. When Israel did not have a king, everybody did what was right in their own mind.
That's right.
And, somebody can come into the church and disagree with what the church is teaching. But if what the church is teaching is based on Scripture, then what we are teaching is the truth. And if they don't want to hear the truth, then what do we do?
Yeah, that's right. And
we can't bend the truth. You can't tear out the pages of the Bible that you don't like.
If you want to see examples of this, turn on Judge Judy, any particular episode, and you'll have someone who says, "Well, I don't agree. I don't think I was wrong."
And then she says, "But the law says this. The Scripture says this."
That's exactly right.
And people can take the Scripture and they can. We've seen it happen where people bend the Scripture to say what they want it to say. I looked at that passage today where it said, in the image of God, male and female. So somebody could say, well, he created me both male and female because that's what it says. So I have both parts within me. So I'm identifying with this half. And I could see where they could say, see, the Scriptures are supporting what I'm doing.
Yeah, and of course, then you go to the actual evidence, which is the scientific evidence, which demonstrates that there actually is a difference based on biology. And so this is where we talked about it last week, that there's this problem between biology and sociology and what you think, and rather than what is. Truth is what is. It corresponds to reality. And so when a person who is biologically male says that I'm no longer male, I'm now female, that's a mental switch you can throw. Mm-hmm. It's not a physical switch you throw. And you can have all the surgeries you want, but you can't change who you essentially are biologically because of the makeup of your body. So, it's the church now, this Anglican church, this is really getting on a slippery slope here because look, there are a lot of people out there with very interesting ideas about what reality is. And this happens to be the big one that's in the media now, but you just wait and see what's coming, because this is literally the slippery slope. I mean, it's greased, and it's going to be fascinating to see what comes after this.
Well, the motion that they passed asking for this or approving this new thing, there was an amendment to the motion that asked bishops to consider the theological, pastoral, and other issues around gender transition, and that amendment was rejected. Yeah. So they're saying, we want to pass this amendment, but we don't want to talk about the theology. We don't want to talk about how this is going to affect the servant leaders of the church.
Well, even that article also quotes this lay person who was there, who said, who is a supporter of transgender rights, but says this makes the church look foolish. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of agreement on that path. We'll have more to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And welcome back to Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And I'm Ben Ball, along with Reverend Robert Cornegie and Reverend Carl Zarowski, as we talk about some of the issues of faith that are in the news. And this one comes out of the stream, stream.org. And the headline is Hawaii to force pro-life pregnancy centers to advertise free abortions. All 5 of Hawaii's pro-life pregnancy centers will be forced to choose between advertising free abortions and defying the state's demands starting Wednesday after Governor David Ige, I'm not sure how you say that, allowed a mandatory disclaimer bill to become law Tuesday night. Mirroring a 2015 California law, Hawaii's edict forces locally funded pregnancy centers to post and distribute to each client a notification that the state offers free abortions, as well as a website link on where and how to schedule a taxpayer-funded abortion. The mandated signage and disclaimer form must include verbiage that says things like, the clinic does not provide abortion services, Hawaii has public programs, and to apply, here's the link. And so, Robert, you've been on this battlefront for a long time.
Oh, yeah. It goes on, and it always, there's a new, approach to them trying to undo the good that has been done through these pregnancy centers. I mean, it is just remarkable the impact that it's having on lives,
right,
on families, not just saving lives, the children, but on actually helping the parents make better decisions about what's going on. And so
make
now,
them together.
Yeah. And so it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. What matters is that this mandate, this is obviously a political decision. It's not as far as they're concerned, a moral decision. And here's another one where they deny the science. The progressive left-wing side claims to be, truth-based, evidence-based information, and yet they completely deny the science that has proven without doubt that life begins at conception. Human life begins at conception. So when you, regardless of the age, whether it's zygote or whatever, that is a human life already. And so the point is, you can bet that they're not forcing the abortion clinics
to advertise
about the pro-life centers where they can have alternatives to an abortion. That's not happening. What's happening is that they're mandating that the pro-life centers talk about this tax-funded abortion program. These are Hawaiians who are paying to have children killed in the womb. And I'm telling you, Hawaii has been getting on the map lately because of their politics. I mean, you talk about a state that has gone beyond the fringe. Hawaii seems to be trying to win that crown of that that star of being the most liberal of the liberals, and it's following along on what California did. And we look at California and we say, oh yeah, that's California, but
Right.
here we are, Hawaii following suit, doubling down on it.
National pro-life groups, National Institute of Family Life and Advocates, and Alliance Defending Freedom, American Center for Law and Justice, all planning to challenge the law in state and federal courts. Now, it's already been upheld, though. The California law was already upheld in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and that covers Hawaii, too. So the challenge to this law is likely going to fail at that level.
It'll have to go to the Supreme Court, and we don't know if the Supreme Court will take it. I hope they will, because this is, you talk about this is stepping all over the First Amendment in all aspects of the First Amendment.
One of these pro-life pregnancy centers is located on the campus of a church. And so that's interesting as well. But as we all know, churches support all these groups, and for reasons that they believe there's an alternative to abortions, a good Christian alternative.
And we know that when women are presented with the alternatives, that they most likely, not in all cases, but most likely in most cases, when they can see another path forward, they will choose that path. Instinctively, they don't want to harm their child. And so, here we have options being offered. And, it's just sad. It is so sad how government gets in. This is why, limited government, small g government is so important. And this is a state government doing this. This is the state. This isn't just the federal.
That's right.
I mean, federal, of course, set it up. But these are state governments that are doing that.
Yeah, is this a worry? I mean, if it's upheld here in the Ninth Circuit, even before it, because it could be a couple of years before it actually makes it to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's right.
Depending on how it's prosecuted. But what do you think, Carl? Is this going to be? Is this something even our local pregnancy center should worry about?
I think they should.
I imagine they do. So.
Well, sure, but this is like so many other things we've seen that 30, 40 years ago we would have said, oh, well, it'll never be that way.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden something becomes law here, it becomes law there. Next thing you know, it's the law of the land.
And we've watched euthanasia take that course, so
we've watched everything take that course.
Right.
That's that to me. And I know you like legal stuff, Ben. And one of the things we've seen is that, and you may know when it actually happened, when we shifted from the common law basis of jurisprudence, of how we judge, how we determine what's the law, to this thing of precedence. And it's made a major shift in the way we look at it. So once you can get, and of course people understand it now, that's what you do. You go court shopping. You try to find the most liberal place to do it. And, well, lo and behold, we're the two most liberal places to do it, beginning with California and now Hawaii and probably Oregon and probably Washington and New York State and Illinois. And, you look for those courts and you get a couple of wins and you have established precedents. And so now the courts look back, and rather than going back to what is the actual constitutional law, what is that position, they rely completely on precedents. So I'm pretty critical of that. I don't think that was the intent of the founders, was to have that kind of legal system.
Well, at least at the Supreme Court level, they can review and ask for a review, depending on the cases that are what are the issues that are presented at the appeals court. But they can pretty much kind of start over if they so desire. But we'll see how that progresses. because they've already got the Ninth Circuit Court making a ruling. So if that gets appealed, it's going to be the same ruling.
Correct.
And as this one says, who's trying to defend the pro-life centers, says failure is not an option. If they can win the California case, they'll win the Hawaii case too.
Right.
So,
right.
But this is again every time that we seem to have a pro-life victory in the court, then there's another workaround.
Correct.
There's someone else that's found another way. I mean, who would ever imagine? I mean, that we would, for example, we're a federally licensed radio station. Would we be obligated to post the websites of other radio stations on our website? You know, because we're federally licensed. I mean, would that be an obligation that we must share the business around? So that, who would have thought that would be the case 20 years ago?
Well, in this article, it talked about what was going on in the state of Illinois, where they had a Healthcare Right of Conscience Act that was voted down in 2016, and that now pregnancy centers can be held liable to civil penalties if they refuse to counsel on the so-called benefits of abortion and refer their patients directly to local abortion providers. What are the benefits of taking a human life?
Look, you could never get this through the legislative branches of the government. You could never get this through Congress. It would never pass. So the only way they can do it is through the judicial side, is through these
But
judges.
yet they got it through the legislative branch in Hawaii.
Well, that's true. That's true.
And from what the article says, the pro-life people didn't really even get to bring their argument to the table.
No, they weren't. They weren't on the table. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, this is, again, the popular culture has some beliefs that are just untrue, and that, the big one is that we were just talking about the male-female thing. Mm-hmm. And so suddenly that's out the window. And so now you're born that way, which is, there is no biological evidence from all the studies that have been done, that twin studies and everything else that supports that position. But so, what we're seeing is it doesn't really matter what the truth is. It's just what is the most popular position. And the popular position right now, obviously in Hawaii and California, is that abortion is good.
Because it's convenient.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
It's not just what is the popular truth. It's what is the convenient truth.
Well, and it's also, we've crossed that line now. We used to say that abortion was not contraceptive, was not a form of contraception.
Right, but now they do.
Now that's the other popular myth.
Even the liberal progressive wing used to say, we would prefer people didn't have abortions. Well, that's not even the case now.
No, that's
They
gone.
don't even pretend to say that anymore.
Yeah, that's gone.
We'll have more to come on Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240, when we continue in just a moment. Welcome back to Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And I'm Ben Ball, along with Reverend Carl Zarowski and Reverend Robert Cornegie, as we talk in our third segment here about an article that showed up in the BBC. It's our second time referring to the BBC this morning. This is called Pakistan's Secret Atheists. And being an atheist in Pakistan can be life-threatening. Omar, named after one of Islam's most revered caliphs, has rejected the faith of his forefathers. He is one of the founding members of an online group, a meeting point for the atheists of Pakistan. But even there, he must stay on his guard, and members use fake identities. One man contacted him to say that he had visited his Facebook profile and printed out pictures of him with his family You cannot be safe, Omar says. In Pakistan, posting about atheism online can have some serious consequences. Under recently passed cybercrime law, it is now illegal to post content online, even in private forum, that could be deemed blasphemous. Carla, I think most of us in this country, we kind of still have, even with all the arguments that we have, we're in a brigandine state. We don't realize what goes on sometimes out in the world, that these things that we take for granted, even if they're under assault, that we still take for granted, that we can't imagine this kind of thing happening here.
No, because in this country, as we've really seen since this last election, you can say whatever you want to online, and we've seen that. And the biggest fear that we have here is that we're going to upset somebody, okay, that we might lose a friend. But here, they post how they really feel about something. They could lose their life. And no, I think we take for granted a lot of the freedoms we have. This is a very repressive religious state that we're talking about here. And if you don't toe the line, then you're going to be taken care of or taken out.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It was you shared earlier about the transition that took place in Pakistan,
and Iran, and all those places. In Persia. Used to be able to travel very right. Westerners could travel
exactly, and that with the Shah and everything else that took place, and this resurgence of jihadist radicalism. How it's changed.
Almost all those countries are radicalized now. In one form or another.
And so we're kind of used to sort of the European. We talked about it last week. The European sort of form of religion, which is a part of the state in many of the European countries, but it's innocuous. It's not. We're obviously, from what's going on in the Church of England and everything else, it's open. And to go into a closed place like this, and just back with the Pope and the whole thing in Poland.
Right.
And the speech that Trump gave, we talked about that. They chose God, and so what we're seeing is it's tyranny. It's the thought police. It's not what you do so much as it is what you think. And that's pretty terrifying.
And as Christians, we should be alarmed, I think, about even this is an atheist group, but we understand the free expression of religion also includes that.
Well,
right?
Yeah, and the catalyst of this, it's not against the law. It was interesting.
Yeah.
To be an atheist, it's against the law to blaspheme against Allah.
Right.
And so when you make a statement and against the state, against the police.
Yeah. It's still called blasphemy too, by the way.
That's right. And so when you declare that there is no God, or you declare that Jesus is the Son of God, well, you're blaspheming. Both counts. And so that's why Christians need to pay attention to this stuff.
Right.
Because what we're seeing is the thought police now are saying, no, there's only one way to look at this. It's the way the state looks at it. And if you don't agree, then you are you will be punished.
This is the same reason why in our previous administration, when we looked at the State Department promoting what they called freedom to worship, is that as long as you were inside your building and you were worshiping at the place of your choice, then there were freedoms there. But if you're out in the public square
or on the internet,
which is the worldwide public square, then it may be different. Maybe different rules will apply. And we're starting to see that now. I mean, look at even Mark Zuckerberg talking about Facebook as the new church. This is
replacing what the church used to do.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. So we are in. It's amazing how quickly it seems quick to us. I don't know if it really is as quick as it seems.
As fast as the internet.
It just seems like everything has sped up to the point that it takes your breath away every morning when you get up and look at the news or read the newspaper or go online, and it's like, whoa, another sacred cow just got slaughtered.
Yeah.
Metaphorically speaking.
Yes. But this is how what we were all raised, with an understanding that you respected people of other faiths. You may disagree with them strongly,
Right.
and encourage them to rethink their ideas.
And that's that's part of what we stand for in the United Methodist Church too. That we respect other people's beliefs and their right to believe what they want to believe. We don't have to agree with it, but we do need to honor that and give them the space to do that. One of the things this article reminded me of is think about the days of the Christian movement right after the crucifixion. Where were the disciples? They were behind locked doors. Why were they behind locked doors? Because this new direction that they were a part of, this new movement, was
Illegal.
Yeah. That's right. And so, not that I am promoting atheism by any means, but maybe this group saying, well, we don't want to follow this teaching of Islam. We don't want to agree with what the state is doing with the religion. That maybe this is a good thing that this is starting.
Well,
here.
we've had many arguments with people who are radical atheists. Those things, but we've always protected their right to do that.
That's
correct.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
We don't have to agree with them. And I don't know that these folks are going out and being radical atheists, but we don't really see that in the story. But what they're doing is they're trying to show support for others who are in their circle and who feel the same way that they do. But they're putting their lives on the line for that. Are we willing to stand up for our faith with that same amount of backbone?
Well, that's the legacy, really, of the church, isn't it? That we've always gone to those, regardless of what they believed. We've helped them. We've been there. We're that ministry of presence. That we are there, and we are willing to put ourselves in harm's way. We're willing to defend your right to be wrong. And what we're seeing now, the scary part, is what the conservatives have become liberals, and the liberals have become conservatives, and to the point that the liberals are now saying, no, we can't tolerate any other thought than what is the politically correct thought. And we're not going to allow you to do this. Just as, I mean, you can see the parallels as what's happening in Pakistan. They're basically saying there is no God but Allah, and if you don't follow that course, whether it's Christian or Buddhism or Hinduism or atheism or whatever it is, you are outside. You are not a Pakistani.
And you're saying that's parallel to the college campus that is saying
that's what's happening on the campuses.
That is saying that if you express a religious belief, you are outside of our mainstream.
Right. That's exactly right.
So
you're not a blue devil, or you're no longer a wolf pack, or you're part of the pack. I mean, it's I'm being hyperbolic there, but. The fact is, it's hard to believe that it goes to this.
It's the parallel thought line.
But this is where it goes.
Yeah.
This is the consequence of that kind of thinking. And so we're seeing this happen. And so, we can in solidarity say, look, this atheist has the right to be an atheist. Should have the right.
Well, that's where it is. We say they should have the right, but we're not in control of the government in Pakistan.
That's exactly right.
And in Pakistan, they don't have that right. And so people here need to understand the rights we have, and they had better cherish those rights, because if they ever are taken away, then what happens to us in the church?
Yeah, well, it's fascinating, isn't it, that you were talking about the early church, and what was it that got the believers out of Jerusalem? Persecution. With when Saul started persecuting the Christians after Stephen basically called out the Sanhedrin for murdering Jesus. And all of a sudden, man, they came down like a storm on the church, and the church scattered from Jerusalem, and that was the beginning of the turning the world upside down. So look, folks, God's in control. We sit back, we look at this stuff, we think, how could anything good come out of this? But God specializes in turning what was meant for bad into something that's good. And so I think that's why we need to pray for Pakistan, not only for the tiny minority of Christians that are there, but also for the others that are there, because there are others. Mm-hmm. They're Buddhists, they're Hindus, they're you name it, the whole spectrum. They're
now their own very existence is being threatened. Their lives are being threatened.
Exactly.
We'll have more to come in a moment here in our final segment coming up in just a bit here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. Thank you for joining us today on Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And I'm Ben Ball, along with Robert Cornegy and Carl Zarowski, as we talk about our final segment today, which is the segment about, and you may have seen this story coming out about Eugene Peterson, who was in the news and some controversy over the last week or so. As the first article that we look at from the Gospel Herald Society, it says Lifeway may stop selling the Message Bible over Eugene Peterson's pro-LGBT comments. It's followed by how was it, just the next day? Yes, it was just the next day. When it's followed by Eugene Peterson would not perform a same-sex wedding. So there was a little walking back of this. Eugene Peterson has written many books in the past, and his most popular probably is The Message, and it's called The Message, the Bible in Contemporary Language. And he was formerly part of the Presbyterian USA, was it? I think that's right, Presbyterian USA. Right. And he was asked to whether or not he would perform a gay wedding, a same-sex wedding ceremony. I would have said this 20 years ago, but now I know a lot of people who are gay and lesbian, and they seem to have as good a spiritual life as I do. I think this kind of debate about lesbians and gays might be over. People who disapprove of it, they'll probably just go to another church. So we're in a transition. I think it's a transition for the best, for the good. I don't think it's something that you can parade, but it's not right or wrong thing as far as I'm concerned. And then he went on to say that he did say in an interview recently that he would marry a same-sex couple. So Lifeway has said they're going to have to confirm that, but they may stop selling The Message. Then the next day, the article is Eugene Peterson has retracted comments he made in support of same-sex marriage, explaining that on further reflection and prayer, he would not, in fact, perform a same-sex wedding if asked, but would still love a homosexual couple as their pastor. Seem to be quite the opposite statements from when you read what his original language was in this interview, Robert.
Yeah. He had an awakening.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna judge what was the.
You're not going to take the cynical view that it was all about the money. Is that what you're saying? You're
I'm not going
to say that.
No, I mean, look, Eugene Peterson been around a long time. I mean, I've read some of his stuff, and of course, I have his. The Message is not a translation; it's a paraphrase of the Bible. So it had a different intention. It's not trying to, textual criticism. What he's just trying to, it's more pastoral, and so he's trying in it.
Like somebody might say in a sermon.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So you don't look for it for necessarily for theological precision. It's more of a relational kind of thing.
However,
and it serves a purpose for some people. I mean, it can be comforting. His approach.
Okay, but it is a commentary.
It is.
It's a paraphrase, but that includes his own understanding of what this might mean.
That's
in any
exactly
given phrase. It's so not a translation. So I really have an objection with it being sold as a Bible, and then also being used as a Bible. You know, Carl. I mean, I'll just start there, saying that I think Lifeway may have just said, "Wow, well, we don't have to put it in the Bible section any longer."
Right, and I think that's a great point. It should be over in the commentary
Yeah.
section. You know, it shouldn't be in the Bible section. But
And-
but just remember, the guy's 84 years old.
Right.
He retired from ministry, active
20-some
ministry,
years ago.
25 years ago. And I think his last time he did a pastorate was in like 79. You know, and his church, which he's still affiliated with, is kind of the progressive liberal wing of. There was a split in the Presbyterian Church, and these are the remnant that stayed, and you know, they have just passed. We talked about it, didn't we? About them
Yeah.
agreeing to LGBT leadership
Right.
in the church, active. I mean, you know. So, you know, and the question was asked, if you were a pastor today,
Right. Right.
would you do it?
Yeah,
Well, if he's a member of the church and the church has just said, you have to do it,
Yeah.
then I don't know if he thought it all the way through, but he said, well,
Yeah.
yes,
Right.
if I were today. It's a hypothetical.
Am I, I'll put it on me, am I mixing these two things together? You know, my own personal concerns about his book, his writing, along with his business, or is that a fair thing to critique here, considering that Lifeway actually made the headlines that they may not sell it?
Well, first, I want to say something about the message. Okay, like you said earlier, Ben, the message serves a very good purpose, and once in a while, I might even quote from the message in a sermon. But whenever I do, I always say, "Now this comes from the message," and I'm not a big fan of the message. But I like the way that this was worded here because it helps to shed some light on, you know, a difficult passage. Okay. And the message can, I believe, bring somebody to, they can bring somebody to God, somebody who reading the Bible, the language is just a little too churchy for them.
Right.
Okay. So it serves a purpose. But the fact that Peterson so quickly went from, sure, I would do it, to, well, I was sort of tricked into answering that question. I was sort of cornered, which in the first article, I just didn't see it. But now, in his defense, I wasn't there for the interview. I've been interviewed, came out in the article, and I went, well, that's not really what happened. Okay.
This is a phone interview, too.
But there's a lot of copies of the message that are being sold. Lifeway sells a lot of them, and all of a sudden, they're not going to sell your book. You know, it's a little suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a 24-hour revelation.
Well, you know how this stuff works.
Yeah.
So now there are going to be a lot more Message Bibles sold because of this controversy from both sides.
And maybe-
Those that agree and those that disagree. They're going to be picking that thing up just to see what in the world he was talking about in there, if they can find some, you know, the pro and the con sides. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about too heavily about one of God's anointed, because I do believe God has used Eugene Peterson
absolutely.
over the years.
Because you can't ignore all of his work.
Oh, my
No,
goodness.
you can't. You can't.
And his pastoral and his letters to pastors, you know, these books, the series that he wrote is just fantastic. I mean, there's some really good stuff in there about pastoral care.
So, but the question really is that that reversal of opinion. You know, I mean, we would look at it. I mean, we'll look at it in the civil sense, and we look at it from a journalistic sense, not kind of disregarding the theological side of that.
Right.
Is that saying, well, it's just very convenient that it happened at this time. But like you said, a telephone interview, kind of put it on the spot about it. You know, people do react under pressure. And that may not be exactly how he feels, but I felt like he blamed the interviewer a little too much.
He did, basically. Yeah, and you know, I agree with him in terms of loving the sinner.
Oh yeah,
loving the homosexual.
Same as we've had in the other segments.
Exactly. This is just what we're talking about. That is not that's not the issue. The issue is participation in the life how far do you go in the participation of the life of the church, and on these things that contradict doctrine. Doctrine is important. Theology is important. We just can't say they're secondary, tertiary issues. They are primary issues. And and what we've seen is this slowly degrading our commitment to these things. So in many of the churches.
Well, something else to think about. Both of you have had your experience being in the pulpit and preaching, and after the service, somebody comes up to you and says, well, I don't agree with this point you made.
Sure.
And they talk to you about it, and then you go home and you give it some thought, and maybe you pray about it, and you go, you know what? I wasn't right with what I said. Mm-hmm. That could be what happened with him here as well. We don't know because we're not inside
Right.
his head.
You have to assume his phone was ringing off the hook, one way or the other.
Now, was that the red phone that come directly up to heaven?
Yeah, he probably got a.
Well, it is such a hot button issue.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we speak about it from afar. And we don't have people holding placards up, like he may have had outside his window the next day. So we don't see that pressure one way or the other necessarily. So we're speaking, but we should speak about the general understanding of loving people as creatures, as being created by God.
That's right.
Right, and then we speak about, as you said, doctrine and theology. Where does that actually fall together?
Well, there's this recent development within that denomination. This is a recent development. He has put himself in a really difficult position because he kind of gave it and took it away. He kind of agreed with where the denomination was going, and then he disagreed with where the denomination was going. So there's going to be this isn't over, I don't think, for Eugene Peterson.
Yeah. Well, we should pray for him.
We should, absolutely.
Indeed. And thank you for joining us today on Faith Matters on the Talk Station.
Thank you for joining us for Faith Matters. Email your comments, questions, and suggestions to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life. Give me faith.
Faith Matters is a production of The Talk Station.